I was an orphan taken in by the Lin family. The elders arranged for me to marry Benjamin. I happily agreed, and so did he. But after the wedding, he became cold and distant. He used business as an excuse and lived separately from me for years. My mother-in-law constantly complained that I hadn't given the Lin family any children. She always treated me with disdain. My life was consumed waiting for Benjamin and taking care of his mother. Exhausted, I lay on a hospital bed near death. Benjamin, as my husband, never came to see me one last time. Instead, Susanna told me kindly that he was busy preparing their wedding. Ben just said he'll marry me as soon as you die, she smiled. Olivia, you've been the lady of the Lin family for over 30 years. But I have no name, and our children have no status. You should be satisfied. It was then I found out that Benjamin had another family, had a mistress and a child. And I was the only one left alone. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the past, back to the time when I was still living in the Lin household. Benjamin's mother was joking again. Olivia, do you like our Benjamin? But now, I didn't like him anymore. In this life, I just want to do what truly makes me happy. Chapter 1. I can still smell the hospital disinfectant. The pain still lingers in my bones. In front of me stood Benjamin's mother, me former mother-in-law, asking, Olivia, do you like our Benjamin? After graduation, how about marrying Benja? In the living room were the Lin family and a few family friends of my deceased parents. This woman looked so gentle and kind, nothing like the cold and cruel person from my past life. Because Benjamin and I spent more time apart than together, I never got pregnant. She made up reasons to torment me, forced me to drink bitter herbal decoctions every day, brought a fertility goddess statue, and made me kneel before it to pray. But that was nothing. It was the daily sarcasm that truly crushed my spirit. Not to mention, she made me serve her tea, fetch water, and give her massages. And whenever I tried to resist, she would cry and wail about how hard it had been to raise an orphan like me. She said she had treated me like her own daughter, comforted me when I had nightmares, cared for me when I was sick. That was my weakness, so I never resisted. Olivia, don't be shy, speak up, she urged with a nudge. I snapped out of my thoughts and met the impatient look in her eyes. If only I had looked more closely in my past life, I would have seen that her impatience came from wanting to pair me with Benjamin, from her eagerness to seize my inheritance. Back then, I was just a pampered young girl, still reeling from the loss of my parents. I thought I had found comfort and family in the Lin household. How could I have known better? But now, after over 30 years of a hollow marriage, after enduring the true face of Benjamin's mother once her mask came off, everything was crystal clear. So I stood up and smiled. Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I only see Benjamin as a brother, and after high school, I want to go to college. Chapter 2. Her face turned pale. Today, in front of everyone, she asked if I liked Benjamin just to force me to confirm the engagement. That way, she could start using my assets without being questioned. But she recovered quickly. She stood up and hugged me, laughing to everyone. This girl is just shy. Benja, take Olivia out to the garden for a walk. Benjamin was sitting on the sofa across from me. A young Benjamin, handsome, aloof. Since his father was my father's friend, Benjamin and I could barely be called childhood acquaintances. I used to like clinging to him, asking him to play with me. When we were kids, we got along well. But as we grew older, he became distant. In my past life, I didn't understand it. I thought we were just supposed to keep some distance as we matured. I never realized that Benjamin had grown tired of me. I was a proud, stubborn girl. But he had to obey his parents and cater to me. He didn't like it, but he couldn't shake me off. Of course he resented it. He ignored me, that was fine.
But he still married me.
Married me, let his mother torment me, while he loved Susanna in secret. I hated him. But I hated myself more for being blinded by emotion and living such a miserable life. I clenched my fists, then slowly let go. I gently pulled away from Benjamin's mother's embrace and kept smiling. There's no need. Don't you have plans to see Susanna, your classmate, later? If you like her, you should bring her home soon. Someone among the guests laughed. So Benjamin already has someone he likes, but your mother keeps matchmaking. That was when I looked directly at him. His face was even paler than his mother's. The corners of his eyes slightly red. I didn't bother looking again. I simply nodded to the guests and walked away. Chapter 3. I left the hall and went straight to the front yard mailbox. Among the letters, I finally saw one addressed to me. Olivia, Benjamin's voice called from behind. I quickly turned and hid the letter behind me. What are you throwing a tantrum for today? He frowned. What's going on? Yesterday, you confessed your love, and today you say I'm like a brother? Can you stop being so impulsive? He continued. My mother treats you like her own daughter, and you embarrassed her in front of everyone. I stared at him silently. I thought of my past life. After the wedding, his mother had also humiliated me in public. I complained to Benjamin once and that alone made him resent me. He said, hasn't my mother treated you well enough? You can't even take a few harsh words. So this time, I'll give him the same words back. So your mother treats me like a daughter, but she can't handle a few honest words from that daughter? He was speechless. Then he sighed. You're not in your right mind. Of course, in his eyes, I wasn't. After all, in my past life, after my parents died, I truly saw the Lin family as my own. I even changed my once proud and arrogant nature. I became careful with my words around Lin's mother, tried to please Benjamin with everything I had. I chuckled bitterly. Then why are you mad again? Don't you hate it when I chase after you? I'm telling you now I don't like you, just as you always wanted. I turned to leave. I still had to open the letter in my hand. But Benjamin called out. I don't. Chapter 4. It doesn't matter, I interrupted. None of that matters, Benjamin. Whether you love me or not means nothing to me anymore. He frowned deeply. So, not even nice words work anymore? Olivia, you're still so hard to deal with. Since my parents passed away, I've had no one to rely on, which gave Benjamin the audacity to start speaking to me this way so blunt, so unkind. But am I really hard to deal with? Or did I simply not follow his expectations? What he called nice words were just tools to pacify me temporarily. What he really wanted was to coax me into getting engaged again. In my past life, as soon as we got engaged, he used the excuse of company expansion to ask for money. He made me liquidate most of my assets to pave the way for his rise. That was when private business sectors opened up. There were opportunities everywhere. With my help, Benjamin monopolized the real estate and food industries in City C, becoming the richest man around. In a 30-year marriage that was nothing but a living widowhood, everyone envied new wife of the wealthiest man. But none of them knew that without me, without Olivia, Benjamin would have never had the chance to reach such heights. In this life, I want to stand at the top myself, to look down on the Lin Familia bunch of clowns celebrating their own downfall. Too lazy to argue, I simply smiled. Hard to deal with? So what? If you don't like it, put up with it. Chapter 5. I returned to my room, anxious to open the letter. I actually had another uncle. He and my mother were half-siblings on their father's side. He lived in the UK. I had only seen him once, when he came to our home seeking help for his elderly mother. My parents had helped him a lot, even recommending a good hospital. After that, our families kept in occasional contact. But over the years, we lost touch. In my past life, I never knew that my uncle had gone abroad to seek a better life and, by chance, succeeded. A year after my parents' car accident, he found out. He learned that I had been adopted by the Lin family. Then he wrote me a letter, hoping to reconnect. The letter was sent to my old house and eventually reached the Lin family mailbox. Lin's mother had always known about that letter, but she chose to hide it, saying nothing. It wasn't until many years later that I found out my uncle had been sending money and letters all along. But by then, it was far too late. Only now, as I read the letter, did I learn the truth. Me uncle couldn't return to the country for some reason, so he wrote instead. In the letter, he said this was the 10th one he'd written, and the contents were mostly the same. He shared about his life abroad, offered comfort, and asked if I'd be willing to go to the UK. Back then, the UK was a very advanced place. Its education and job markets were top-notch. Inside the envelope were 10 high-value US dollar bills and a plane ticket to the UK. My nose stung. I wasn't truly alone. I still had family. The flight would depart from Shanghai, just 4 days away. I felt renewed. My next step was to handle the inheritance my parents left behind. The properties were unmoved, well located, with potential to rise in value. I planned to split the money. Half would be taken abroad, the other half stored in the bank. After all, I didn't really know my uncle well. I needed to secure everything before contacting him. Chapter 6. Luckily, university entrance exams were already over. I used the excuse of going out with a classmate to get things done. At the bank, I ran into some girls from school. They greeted me cheerfully. We were just looking for you. Come on, class reunion time. The venue they picked was the largest karaoke lounge in the city. Back then, KTV was still very trendy. When I arrived, Benjamin was already there. Someone teased, "Hey, what's going on? Olivia's not with you today." "Yeah, where's your little wife?" Benjamin fiddled with his lighter and replied, "I'm tired of her. It's nice and quiet when she's not around. Besides, I don't like Olivia." Laughter erupted all around.
Then who do you like?
The class beauty. Everyone was having fun, laughing noisily. Someone pushed Susanna toward Benjamin. The girl next to me looked uncomfortable and coughed lightly. Colored lights flashed. That's when the crowd finally noticed me. I walked confidently toward the crowd. "So lively in here. Please carry on." Instinctively, Benjamin stepped in front of Susanna to shield her. "Olivia, what kind of trick are you pulling now?"
Trick?
If I could, I would have stabbed them both right there. But none of that had happened yet. If I claimed I had been betrayed by these two in my past life, who would believe me? I laughed coldly. "Benjamin, why didn't you just say you hated me earlier? You're such a coward." I clapped my hands.
Fine.
"If I'm not welcome, I'll leave." People didn't react right away, and I had already stepped out the door. Benjamin hurried after me. "Olivia, listen to me." "Ah." Susanna fainted, came a shocked voice from behind. Benjamin instantly left me. "Olivia, what I said earlier was just in the heat of the moment. I'll explain later." He didn't even finish a sentence before rushing towards Susanna. I watched him coldly, then turned and walked away without hesitation. There would be no more explanations. In 3 days, I'd leave for the UK. From then on, I wouldn't think of him, and he had no reason to think of me. Chapter 7. The next day, I began tidying up my room, throwing out everything that needed to go. Lynn's mother came by and subtly asked which university I planned to apply to. Of course, I wasn't going to mention studying abroad, so I casually said Shanghai University. She praised the university while rolling her eyes and brought up Benjamin again. "You two can get engaged first. It won't stop you from going to school with Benja." I hadn't even opened my mouth to decline before she changed the subject and reassured me. "I already asked Benja. He and Susanna are just classmates. You're overthinking it again." "Still clinging to that, huh?" I kept a polite distance and said, "Madam, I really have no interest in Benjamin." She didn't believe me and hurried to promise. "Good girl. I'll make sure Benja completely cuts ties with that classmate." Benjamin overheard her clearly. Misunderstanding everything, he took a few steps toward me, his eyes full of disappointment and contempt. "Do you really need the whole world to revolve around you, miss? Susanna's in poor health and has a struggling family. I was just helping her a little more. Do you really need to make a scene and complain to my mother?" As if venting his anger, he pulled out a crystal necklace from his pocket and let the beads scatter across the floor. They rolled and disappeared out of sight. "I was going to give this to you as an apology, but it seems there's no need anymore. Let me make this clear. I have nothing going on with Susanna. But I won't stop seeing her just because of you," Benjamin yelled, then kicked over my trash bin, sending all sorts of items flying. Little dolls, trinkets, everything spilled out. Then suddenly his face turned red. "All of this? I gave these to you." "Yes," I replied calmly. "And I don't like them anymore, so I threw them out." With that, I kicked the crystal beads at my feet. Annoying things. There were only 2 days left until my flight to the UK. The distance from City C to Shanghai wasn't short. I had to leave early. The passport had already been prepared for an overseas trip. I didn't have much luggage. My valuable jewelry and property deeds were safely stored in the bank's deposit box. Coincidentally, both Lynn's father and mother had gone out of town on business, so I wouldn't be saying goodbye in person. They had taken care of me all these years, but only for the inheritance. Lynn's mother had taken the money my uncle sent for herself. Still, it had been enough to support my living expenses. As I walked out with a small suitcase, I ran into Benjamin and Susanna in the reception hall downstairs. It seemed they had just returned from outside. The suitcase in my hand caught Benjamin's attention. He asked, "Where are you going?" "Going to complain to my mother again?" "I'm not interested," I replied. I signaled for them to get out of the way. "I'm going to a classmate's house." "Does Madame Lynn know about this?" I wasn't lying. I had indeed told her I would stay at a classmate's house for 2 days. Benjamin, still irritated, said indifferently, "Come back on your own. I won't come get you." "That's fine." Then, Susanna, who had been silent, suddenly stepped forward with a pitiful tone. "Olivia, classmate, I was kicked out of my home and had nowhere to go. Benjamin took me in out of kindness. I heard Madame Lynn said you and Benjamin had a falling out because of me. I'm really sorry. You don't need to apologize to her." Benjamin grabbed Susanna's wrist. "If it weren't for her being so dramatic, my mother wouldn't have treated you like that. Truly, they were made for each other." I had no interest in the scene and just kept walking forward. Behind me, Susanna's soft, pitiful voice still rang out. "Benjamin, are you going to comfort that classmate Fong? Don't worry about her. She's got nowhere to go. She'll come crawling back sooner or later." Benjamin's voice was cold and firm. I paused briefly, but then kept walking. So this was what they all thought, that I had nowhere to go. That's why they treated me like garbage. No matter. When we meet again, I'll make sure they get a taste of what it's like to have nowhere to turn. Chapter 9. On the first day after I left, Benjamin didn't feel anything. On the second day, he started to feel annoyed and asked the house servants, "Has Miss Olivia come back yet?" The servant shook his head. Benjamin frowned hard. Such a spoiled brat. If she likes being out so much, she can just never come back. After snapping in frustration, he still couldn't help but ask, "Did she say whose house she was going to?" The servant shook his head again. Benjamin grew even more irritated. It felt like a stone was pressing down on his chest, could hardly breathe. He passed by Olivia's room. Beside the broad-leaved plant near the door, something seemed to glimmer faintly. What was he thinking? Benjamin bent down and picked it up. It was a single crystal bead. He paused, dazed for a moment, then crouched down again, driven by some inexplicable force, to see if there were more beads. A wave of regret surged in his chest. Why did he break that necklace? It was supposed to be Olivia's graduation gift. Shiny trinkets always made Olivia happy. He had known that all along. She didn't have a good temper, but after losing her parents, she had softened a lot. He knew that too. So why did he always provoke her? Always make her angry? He thought he could simply apologize when she came back. But one day passed, then 2, then 3, and Olivia still hadn't returned. The restlessness in his heart grew unbearable. He began calling Olivia's friends from school. Everyone said they hadn't seen her. He didn't believe it. He went door to door looking, but there was no trace of Olivia anywhere. Until he finally opened the door to her bedroom. The room that once felt warm and cozy now lacked the rag dolls he had given her. Her clothes and shoes were gone. The space suddenly felt so much bigger. Benjamin frantically searched through the room, hoping to find some trace that Olivia had once lived there. But all he found was a single sheet of paper tucked beneath a book on her desk. "I've left. Sir, ma'am, don't miss me." Just a few simple words. Not even a single punctuation mark. And not one mention of Benjamin. Chapter 10. After the plane landed, I didn't immediately contact the number my uncle had given me. Instead, I hired a private investigator to look into his household. Nothing too in-depth, just to see if the family got along, if the environment was safe. I figured no family that's completely chaotic would be willing to take in a relative they barely knew. Fortunately, the report came back good. My uncle owned a fairly large farm in one of the states. His reputation in the area was solid. His family members were straightforward and seemed to get along well. Even so, I was ready for the worst. If he turned out to be unreliable, I could still study in the UK on my own. It wouldn't be the end of the world. After the investigation, I bought some gifts for his family and then contacted him. The moment he learned I'd arrived, he rushed over to pick me up. 3 days later, I finally arrived at my uncle's farm. He was over 10 years older than my mother, and after years of chasing opportunities under the sun and wind, he looked even older. He wasn't much of a talker. When he saw me, he simply sighed and said, "You look just like your mother." Then he handed me a card and told me to use it however I needed. He let me ride the farm horses and play with their massive dog. My aunt was a plump white woman who made the most delicious desserts. I'll let you in on a secret: they were divine, but way too sweet if you ate too many. Still, she was incredibly kind, constantly trying new styles just to please me. My uncle's son was already married to a Chinese-American woman, and thanks to the two of them, I could still enjoy some homemade Chinese food. My uncle's daughter was just 1 year older than me. When she saw my plain clothes, she shook her head dramatically and said, "Oh my God, don't let that boring outfit insult your perfect figure." Then she dragged me into town for a wild shopping spree. Thanks to her, I quickly integrated into the local youth scene. When summer ended, it was time to go to university. With my uncle's help, I enrolled in the same university as my cousin and chose finance as my major. There was no other reason, just that my past life experience and my current capital were enough for me to start building my own business. Chapter 11. Life in the UK turned out to be warmer and more comforting than I had imagined. During breaks, I helped out with chores around the farm and enjoyed my time there. At school, I attended classes and studied with classmates from all over the world. In my second year, after thorough research, I decided to start an import-export business for practice. I talked it over with my uncle. He didn't oppose, and simply asked if I had enough capital and whether I wanted him to introduce me to any local business contacts. Having a mentor, of course, would make things easier and help avoid mistakes. But for a beginner like me, making a few mistakes wasn't a big deal. I was still young, I had time and money, and I could afford to fall and learn. So, along with 3 other classmates, we invested in a small company. We exported clothing and food from the UK to nearby countries. 1 year later, in my 3rd year of university, the company made a small profit. But the partners started drifting apart. Some wanted to go solo after earning enough money, while others thought the business wasn't stable and decided to quit. And so, the company was officially dissolved. But the whole experience taught me a lot. In import-export, if I controlled the factory side, I'd make more profit. So I began planning again, doing research, preparing to launch a new business before graduation. With the money I'd earned, I bought my uncle a car. I also bought myself an apartment near the university to live with my cousin. In that apartment, I adopted many stray cats, some disabled, some healthy. I took them all in. When sunlight poured onto the balcony, they curled up in fluffy little balls, sleeping peacefully at my feet. I would gently stroke this one, cuddle that one, and sometimes, in those quiet moments, the memories of my past life would drift back softly into my heart. I've always loved cats, and after much persistence, I finally convinced Benjamin to buy a little Siamese kitten. We had just brought it home when Father and Mother Lynn frowned in disapproval. They claimed cats were bad for pregnant women. You can't even get pregnant, and you're still keeping that thing around? What terrible luck. The little Siamese didn't know what it had done wrong. It curled up sadly in my arms. I had no choice but to entrust it to a classmate who also loved cats. I gave her money and supplies and visited regularly. Thinking of that, I picked up a big, long-haired orange cat. It occurred to me that I hadn't thought about my past life or about Benjamin and his family in a long time. After all, I'm pretty happy now. There's no need to dwell on dirty memories. Chapter 12. In the second semester of my 3rd year, my new company was establishing a dairy business, from raising dairy cows to processing the final products. I worked step by step to improve the supply chain. By the time I graduated, the entire production line was up and running. This allowed me to significantly reduce costs. Whether it was the domestic market in the UK or the export business, I now had the confidence to negotiate prices with any partner. Everything was stable. Only then did I propose returning to my home country for a visit. My uncle didn't oppose it. My cousin sister came with me. As soon as we landed, my blonde-haired, blue-eyed business partner Andres came rushing over with a bouquet of roses. He was the typical handsome white guy and spoke fluent Chinese. Olivia, surprised? I was speechless. Didn't you say you were going to stay on site for negotiations? If you're here, who's managing things? His green eyes sparkled. So, I'm not as important as your company, huh? Of course not. Stop playing the victim. My cousin covered her mouth, giggling. He's as handsome as your bodyguard, she whispered, then gave Andres a secret thumbs up. Go get her. Encouraged, Andres confidently ran over to grab my suitcase. But before he could touch it, another tall figure stepped up beside me and swiftly lifted the handle. Then, with a gentleman's poise, he held the umbrella for us. The muscles on his forearm were firm, veins visible beneath his tanned skin. The private car is ready, boss, Marco said with a slightly cold voice, though his tone was still polite. When I looked up, I saw his dark hair and eyes. His face showed little emotion. He stood in front of Andres, as if he didn't notice him at all. Childish, I thought to myself as I slid into the car. Chapter 13. A lot had changed in the country. First, we visited my parents' grave. When I stood before their tombstone, a bouquet of dried white chrysanthemums swayed gently in the wind, probably left by one of their old friends. I moved the old flowers aside and placed my own bouquet. I told my parents about my life abroad, about the care I received from Uncle, about Aunt's cooking, only desserts, about the silly stories of my cousin and his wife caring for their newborn. As for me, everything was going well. I had family I could rely on, I graduated with excellent marks, and I had met many like-minded friends in business. Don't worry. I'm taking good care of myself. It started to rain. The raindrops ran into my mouth, salty. After the ceremony, our group left the cemetery. Andres held an umbrella over my cousin. Marco walked by my side. As we passed by another man and woman, I noticed the man holding a bouquet of white chrysanthemums. The woman was following him with an umbrella, her words sharp and harsh. Even if you come every day, you won't see Olivia. I'm pregnant, why can't you think about my feelings? The woman's voice was familiar yet strange. Instinctively, I turned my head. Who else could it be but Benjamin and Susanna? When my cousin Andres and the others heard my name mentioned, they all looked at me. I shook my head, silently telling them not to worry. Susanna kept ranting. Suddenly, Benjamin stopped, turned sharply, and yanked the umbrella from her hand, throwing it aside. Can't you just leave me alone? You're driving me insane, Susanna shrieked and almost fell. I saw the two of them about to start a full-blown fight right in front of my parents' grave. I quickly asked the cemetery staff to step in and handle it. As for why I didn't approach Benjamin myself, it's because I didn't come back for him. I returned to explore the current real estate market. I came for business. So don't bring unnecessary drama into it. Chapter 14. Just my luck, when I went to check on the old house, I ran into an elderly man, a lifelong friend of both my parents and the Lin family. He immediately called Madame Lin to tell her I was back in the country. She became emotional and insisted I wait for her. Child, how could you return without letting Madame know?
She's been so worried about you.
Wait right here. She'll come get you. No, ma'am. I have other matters. I hung up on my own and handed the phone back to the old man. By the time Madame Lin and her son arrived, our group had already taken the car back to the city hotel. That evening, I attended a banquet to meet with developers from City C and discuss potential collaborations. The banquet was truly grand. Since we were all used to toasting in the UK, we felt right at home. During the event, I had engaging conversations with several entrepreneurs. Partly because I had solid views on doing business, and partly because many of them had distant ties to my parents, that I had both connections and capital, and the business discussions proceeded smoothly. The banquet was halfway through when some commotion arose at the entrance of the hall. Host Mr. Zhao frowned and asked what was going on. Mr. Lin doesn't have an invitation but insists on coming in. Mr. Zhao looked at me. He obviously knew I had once been taken in by the Lin family. Smiling, he said, "It must have been an oversight by the staff. Please invite Mr. Lin in." I remained expressionless. In my heart, I found it funny. An oversight? No one forgot to send Lin an invitation. They simply didn't see the Lin family as important anymore. Without my financial support, the Lin family's small business would have collapsed long ago. With recent policy changes, they nearly went bankrupt. Who would even bother with the Lin family now? I didn't stop Mr. Zhao from letting them in. After all, outsiders didn't know about the conflicts between us. If word got out, they'd call me ungrateful. Better to maintain appearances. Chapter 15. Benjamin's eyes locked onto me immediately. He wore a tailored suit that was slightly worn and wrinkled from the earlier commotion. Without bothering to fix it, he strode straight toward me. "Olivia, you're finally back." There was a burning fervor in his gaze, like a flame rekindled. Those dull eyes of his now sparkled with life. I didn't move. Just before he could reach me, 3 people stepped to my side. My cousin frowned. "Who are you?" Andres crossed his arms. "Another one?" Marcos silently rolled up his sleeves and removed his watch. I sighed. "We're serious business people, for heaven's sake." "Oh, Olivia," Benjamin blushed suddenly. "Why?" I had no intention of catching up with him. "It's been a long time. I have things to dodo, whatever you want." Behind Benjamin, Madame Lin followed closely. Taking advantage of her age, she pushed through the crowd shamelessly. "Olivia, child, how could you leave without saying a word? Where have you been all these years?" She grabbed my hand and began to cry. I gently pulled my hand free. "Madam, the letters my uncle sent, did you receive them all? Why didn't you tell me? And besides, I left a note when I left." The people around us were all sharp enough to understand. With just those 2 sentences, it was clear that Lynn had hidden the letters, deliberately preventing me from finding my relatives. Not because they cared for me too much, but because they wanted to keep the assets under my name. It didn't need to be said outright, everyone understood. Madame Lin stopped crying instantly. She forced an awkward smile. "Olivia, don't be angry, I didn't know if those letters were a scam or not, and by the way, after you left, Benjamin looked for you everywhere. You two should talk and catch up." As she spoke, she tried to push Benjamin closer to me. He said nothing, only looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. His gaze made me uncomfortable. Frowning, Marco stepped forward and blocked him. "The boss doesn't like people getting too close." Andres flanked me on the other side. "Hey, if I with all this good look scald win her over, you've got no chance." But Benjamin ignored them both, eyes fixed on me. "Why did you leave? Do you have any idea how long I searched for you?" I shook my head. "No, and I don't care to know." Chapter 16. Benjamin choked on his words. He pulled a crystal necklace from his pocket. "I had it fixed that day. I went looking for you to make things right. Olivia, I'll never make the same mistakes again." He spoke so earnestly, his eyes shimmering with tears. Andres glanced at the necklace and smirked. "Seriously? That cheap thing?" Benjamin looked at me deeply. "I'll get you anything you want, just don't ignore me."
But gifts never mattered to me.
Back then, he'd give me a rag doll, and it made me happy for days. Happiness came from being with the one you love. But now, not only do I not love Benjamin, I don't even bother wasting the energy to despise him. He's far too weak. Stripping away the emotions that blinded me in my past life, he's not even worthy of being my rival. "I still admire that proud little attitude of yours," I smiled. "You think you can control me? That's cute." "Olivia," all that was just said in anger, he hurried to explain. "I thought that. Oh, it doesn't matter." I took a glass of champagne from a waiter and said lightly, "Does your wife know you came to see me? Don't waste my time, I have business to attend to." Benjamin murmured as if heartbroken. In my past life, I'd have begged him to talk. But all he ever told me was not to disturb him, was always busy with work. His work, sleeping with Susanna, making children, enjoying life with his new family. As I turned to leave, Benjamin panicked. "Don't go, can we start over?" But this time I didn't need to answer. My cousin hurled a glass of wine in his face. "Shameless. You have a wife and still dare to flirt with my sister?" Benjamin stood frozen, drenched and pale. "I didn't hide my marriage on purpose, Olivia. I just want you back. Please don't be angry. It was an accident between me and Susanna. She drugged methods. Why it happened. All these years, I've stayed true to you." "Excuse me? Could you not insult the purity of those 4 words? I have nothing to be angry about." In the end, Madame Lin and Benjamin were politely escorted out by Mr.
Zhao.
After the banquet, Benjamin was still outside waiting for me. I didn't expect Susanna to show up, heavily pregnant, hitting and kicking him furiously. "I'm carrying a child from the Lin family, and you still can't forget another woman? Are you even human?" Pregnant women tend to be irritable. But Benjamin didn't comfort her instead. He found her shouting annoying and told her to go home. In the end, the two got into a fierce argument. Then Susanna was shoved to the ground by Madame Lin. A dark red liquid trickled down her legs, snaking across the floor. I turned away and got into the car. Benjamin abandoned his wife, who needed urgent care, and chased after my car, shouting my name nonstop. "Wow, how romantic," my cousin said sarcastically. "What a scumbag." I corrected her. "He's not in love with me. He just wants to use the idea of an old flame to move me emotionally, so I'll help save the Lin family. That kind of person only loves himself." Chapter 17. The business negotiations went well. I decided to invest alongside Mr. Zhao and others to develop the largest, up-and-coming shopping center in City C. Due to the preparation work needed, I had to stay in the country a bit longer. Andres returned to his country first. Before leaving, he reminded me several times, "There's a saying in your country, a good horse doesn't graze on old pastures and go back to that guy." Then he added, "And seriously, not even as a bodyguard. His monthly salary couldn't even buy your watch." He may look strong, but Marco quietly stepped in. "Boss, I actually own another gym. My monthly profit," I shot them both a look. "I'll buy it myself. Right now, all I want is to make money. If any of you hold me back, I'll fire you all." Andres glared at Marco before boarding his flight with a huff. Marco silently tugged down his sleeves, trying to cover his muscles, but with his broad shoulders and narrow waist, he could hide his arms, but not his firm chest. Childish. Benjamin came looking for me several times. Then he got too busy dealing with his own mess and gave up. After Susanna's miscarriage, her relatives from back home rushed to City C, demanding an explanation from Benjamin. The Lin family's business had already been struggling, and with the added chaos from Susanna's family, they declared bankruptcy. Susanna hired a top lawyer and filed for divorce, winning the majority of the Lin family's remaining assets. Lin's father hanged himself at the old company site due to the bankruptcy. Madame Lin, shocked into madness, began acting erratically, muttering to herself all day long, scolding a daughter-in-law who didn't exist. "If you don't take your medicine, how will you give my family a child? If you don't kneel before Buddha, how will you give Benja a son?" Later, she collapsed on the street, crying and rolling around in the dust. She was hit by a passing car and left bedridden. Benjamin asked Susanna for money to treat his mother, but most of Susanna's money had been swallowed by her greedy relatives and couldn't be retrieved. Besides, she held deep resentment toward the Lin family, so even if she had money, she wouldn't help. The two started fighting again. This time, it escalated. Knives were involved. The result was Susanna's death. Benjamin was arrested immediately. And I paid a visit to Madame Lin in the hospital, so kind, so thoughtful, offering to cover her medical bills. Everyone praised me for being so loyal and virtuous, not knowing that I had hired the worst caregiver for her care. Soon, her body was covered in pressure ulcers, and an unbearable stench filled the room. Standing beside her, I looked down and smiled. "Madam, do you still remember your past life? When you tortured me, did it ever cross your mind that one day you'd end up in my hands? You knew perfectly well Benjamin had someone else, yet you still blamed me for not giving you a grandchild. While I took bitter medicine and knelt in punishment, you were enjoying a happy family life with Susanna's son. For you to taste my pain, wouldn't that be fair?" Madame Lin opened her eyes in rage, flailing her hands, but she couldn't even brush my sleeve. All she could do was open her mouth and drool. In her eyes, there was only bitter resentment. But I won't let her die. She will continue living, barely clinging to life. Before his execution, Benjamin requested to see me. I agreed. In front of me, he cried and confessed. He said he kept seeing memories that didn't belong to him. He saw how his indifference toward me in our past life left me utterly alone. "Can you forgive me? I love you." The reason I never faced my true feelings was because I wanted to break free from my parents' control. I always obeyed them. But when they told me to love you, I went crazy trying to rebel. I was childish. Now I've lost everything.
He sobbed.
I shook my head. He even laughed through his tears. "It's fine. Hate me too. I've suffered so much in this life. Take it as my punishment." I couldn't help but laugh. Punishment? You think punishment comes that conveniently? In the reflection of the glass window, I saw my own brows raised, my eyes sparkling with emotion. You think your company collapsed just because of the market? You think Susanna found the banquet location by coincidence? You think she miscarried that easily? You really believe her rural relatives could afford a top-tier legal team? Benjamin's face grew paler with every word until all color drained from him. But his eyes were bloodshot. You hate me this much? Why shouldn't I? In my past life, I never did anything immoral, never harmed anyone. And yet, I lived like a ghost trapped in a cold, lonely existence. All because the Lin family coveted my inheritance. They destroyed my life. In this life, I merely made a few strategic moves. If anything, I've been merciful. The choices were always theirs to make. I stood up and left him with one final sentence. I'll deliver the news of your execution to your mother myself. I walked out of the prison and got into the official black car. Rain streaked down the windows as the vehicle drove forward. Through the mist, the silhouette of towering buildings in the new commercial district came into view. The future that belongs to me is finally arriving.